One, two, three, four. Why does that song always come into my head every time we're doing? This is the second week in a row. Well, she's just 17. You know what I mean. And here we are, folks. The dream we all dream of, or the nightmare, so to speak. What's going on, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome to Horror Freaking Hump Days. What's going on, everybody? And Kevin is here, of course, always first in line. Good to see you, buddy, and welcome, brother. Anyhow, you are here at Horror Hump Days. We are here at the remote b.hive studios. And every Wednesday, I try to scare the pants off of Kevin. And it's kind of hard. I might have to try tequila sometime. But anyway, we read horror stories to you every Wednesday night. Good evening. Welcome y'all to No Sleep Wednesday. That's right. I tell you guys a horror story every Wednesday night. It's kind of like reading you a bedtime story. It's every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, usually. Every once in a while, the times change, but for the most part, it's 8 o'clock. And I read you some of my published works, which happen to be a little on the scary side. So, anyhow, we have been reading. Hey, Shannon, good to see you, bud. We have been reading from Pavor Nocturnus, book I wrote back in 2023. How the book came about was I had asked some of you to send me prompts for horror stories because I usually been using my nightmares, and you guys sent me your nightmares. And tonight's nightmare is brought to you by a bad dream that comes from a classmate of mine, Lori H. And I'll read about that here in a little bit as we get into the reading. But let's just say there's chainsaws, and of course it's based in Minnesota, and it's out in the rural areas there, Kevin, and like very rural, and yeah, there's some cops. There's cops in the story, so a little piece of home for you, buddy. Little piece of home. Anyhow, yeah, so we've got that going on tonight. I don't know what I'm going to do after this book is done because I don't have anything else written. I mean, I do, but nothing else published. So, yeah. So maybe I'll have to read slower, or I'll just have to cancel Horror Hump Day altogether after we're done with this book and continue some other time when I got more stuff written. We all know how they are. Yes, yes, we do, Shannon. Anyhow, so I am working on another horror book, just not as much as I should be. I've been trying to concentrate on other things, like becoming an EMT, which has proven to be harder than what I thought. Or life is telling me don't do this. But I don't know. I've had some pretty amazing experiences. It's kind of work I really like doing. So they're giving me another shot at it. I got to take 4 classes and retake some practice tests, and then I get 4 more chances to take my final. So I'm very grateful that Ridgewater College and Winthrop Ambulance are willing to give me another shot at it. So I'm going to try my damnedest to get there. Anyhow, that being said, I I do want to squeak in some time to do some writing. I have been trying to finish a serious novel that I've been working on, as well as the new horror book. The new horror book takes precedence over the serious book because, because of this. I can't run out of things to read you now, can I? I don't know. We might figure something else out. Who knows? Who really knows? Maybe I'll start rereading stuff. Who knows? But in any case, that's down the road. This book is 12 chapters long, I believe, and we're on chapter 8. So, but in all fairness, the last time I read this book on air, chapter 12 went 3 hours. So, 3.5 hours, I think. So, chapter 12 will probably get broken down into 3 nights, 3 or 4 nights. So, we'll see how that goes. So, yeah. Writing is something that I very much enjoy. It's very cathartic for me, just like music is. And, but as much as it can give me joy, it also can bring about some sadness because in order to make some of these stories real, I have to kind of dig back to some of my own stuff from my past, and that's not always comfortable. So, that being said, that's why I had this book. It's got everybody else's nightmares in it. So, there you go. Anyhow, alright, so I thought for tonight's reading, I don't know what I was thinking about for tonight's reading. Anyhow, we're going to get into the story here in just a little bit. Afterwards, we're probably going to talk about things that are up and coming, talk about the upcoming gigs we got going on. Bobby and I have got going on this month, and it's really our only 2 gigs that we've had this year. I mean, we had some earlier in the year, but yeah. And then maybe we'll talk about writing or something like that. What do you guys think? We'll talk about what we're going to do with this b.hive channel, or whatever we call this thing. I don't know. But let's get into some darkness. This is pretty cool. I'd really like to know how I could make my screen black and white, because I would love to do this as like a Twilight Zone episode. I think that would be fun. Porn? I wouldn't even know where to start with that, Kev, because I've been saving myself, so yeah. Oh, I could write porn. Is that what you're saying? I don't know. I don't think porn in book form. I don't know how well that would work because it's it's I mean most porn movies. Most guys are using them for probably 3 minutes of the movie, and after that, then they don't watch the rest of it. I don't know. I've never been a purveyor of porn, so not even as a teenager. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. Let's get into our story tonight. Called Chainsaws and Hot Tubs. I was 8 years old, and I was running from a maniac with a chainsaw. Hey Chuck, welcome aboard. And there was a hot tub in the middle of the living room for some reason. Lori H. Sweet and innocent. Huh? What's going on, Chuck? Might need some badgers and bees on this one. I'm back drinking the red and white. Thank you, sir. Thank you. April is never a guarantee for warmer weather in Minnesota. Even less so in northern Minnesota. It was nearly the end of the month, and there was still over 3 feet of snow on the ground in Agate Bay, Minnesota. Lori Harris was 8 years old, and usually a positive, happy kid. Her parents had left for the weekend to go skiing in Afton Alps ski resort down in the Twin Cities. She was left with Vicky Hanska, who was a local young adult who had watched Lori for the last 5 years. Lori was outside playing in the snow. Inside, Vicky was calling a few of her friends to invite them to come over for a hot tub party. The Harris home was equipped with an indoor jacuzzi, planted in the rec room on the first floor of the house between the kitchen and the living room. It had been a long winter, and a snowy one. A total of 17 feet had fallen on the Iron Range over the season, and everyone had cabin fever and a slight chill in their bones that would probably develop into arthritis when they reached their 50s. So, Vicky's friends had thought a hot tub party was a grand idea. A grand idea, indeed. Outside, Lori was playing in the snow fort she and her father had built in the backyard. They had spent an entire weekend hollowing out the massive mound of snow. Her dad had put a fire pit in the middle of it, with a hole in the roof for ventilation. They had a couple fires in there already. The heat from it had glazed the walls with ice. There was a long tunnel, big enough to crawl through, that took you to the only door in and out of the fort. They had hung a large towel at the entrance and a packing blanket at the opening to insulate it. She had wished her dad was here now to light another fire. She wasn't allowed to touch matches or Mom's cigarette lighter. So, she sat in the cold dampness of her fort, alone. She did love the quiet, but it was also lonely. Lori crawled out of her fort and saw that fresh snow was falling in giant flakes, silently to the ground. She giggled and tried to catch them on her tongue. She enjoyed the silence of winter, and maybe only the sound of the wind blowing across the pine trees that bordered their property. She would lay herself under the thick blanket of fresh snow and watch the flakes fall gently onto her face. Her solace would be interrupted. Somewhere to her left, she had heard what sounded like a large boot shifting in the snow. When temps were chilly, the crunch would be loud. She sat up and looked around. It was hard to pinpoint where the sound was coming from, and it only happened once. "Hello?" she said to the darkening evening. There was no answer, except for the northwesterly breeze that whistled through the pine branches. If her parents were home, she wouldn't think anything about it, but she knew the reality of their absence, and the even more hideous reality that they were far away. She got a sick feeling in her stomach, and stood up awkwardly in her snowsuit and clopped her way to the front door in her heavy snow boots. "Hey, Lori," Vicky greeted. "Did you get too chilly?" "No," Lori answered. She pulled off her layers of clothes, jacket, hat, mittens, snow boots, snow pants, left them in a heap, and ran into her room. Vicky grimaced. This was unlike her. Usually she'd beg her to come outside with her, but that look on her little 8-year-old face was fear. It made something dance in her own stomach. "Lori!" she yelled down the hallway. "Lori, are you okay?" There was no answer. So she walked down the hall to Lori's bedroom. Buried in a multitude of stuffed animals, Lori's face stared at the ceiling, her cheeks red from the cold. "Hey, kiddo, what's the matter?" Vicky sat on her bed beside her, removing stuffed bears and dogs to see her better. I think there's a man out there," Lori said without any emotion in her voice. "A man? Are you sure?" "I'm not sure, but I heard him, or something." Sometimes, when the wind blows hard enough, it will stretch those pine trunks, and they will creak. "Maybe you just heard the woods. It's kind of windy out there." "Maybe." Vicky thought briefly that if it was Henry Gillis, they had been flirting quite a bit with each other, and he was known to play pranks. "Why don't I take a look around, okay?" Vicky asked Lori. "Please, don't go out there." "Honey, it's okay. I'm just going to look around. I'll just walk around the outside of the house. You'll be able to see me in the windows, okay?" Lori nodded. After Vicky stuffs herself into her own fashionable snow attire, a shiny parka with faux fur around the hood, with matching thin-soled snow boots, she grabs a flashlight and opens a heavy wooden door, allowing large flakes to dance their way into the Harris's foyer. Lori immediately runs to the thin rectangle windows on either side of the front door. She cups her hands to watch her babysitter slowly search the heavily wooded border of the remote home. She then ran to the living room bay window as Vicky walked along the front side of the house. Lori had no idea what she would do if the circle of light alit upon some strange man hiding amongst the pines of her yard. Would she scream? Would she run? "Whenever you feel unsafe," her father would say, "call 911 and hide until help comes." She looked around the room and eyed the telephone sitting on the end table next to the chair her dad would smoke his pipe by the fireplace. She turned and saw that Vicky had gone. Panic rose up in her gut, and she gasped. She ran into the dining room and pulled back the shades in front of the sliding glass door. Vicky was standing 4 feet from the door, and it made Lori jump, and a small squeak came out of her. "Oh, it's okay, honey," Vicky's voice, muffled by the double-paned glass. After a long survey of the area, Vicky moved on, and Lori ran through the kitchen and through the French doors that led to the rec room. She took a quick glance at the phone hanging on the wall, and then the wall-to-wall glass. Vicky had uncovered the hot tub for tonight's gathering, and the humidity had steamed up the glass. She wiped at the fogged glass with the sleeve of her shirt and cupped her tiny hands around her eyes to find Vicky. Panic raised its ugly head again, as she couldn't see her. She checked through several panels until she got to the glass door that led to the brick patio outside. Again she jumped as Vicky opened the door just as she was peeking out to look for her. "Oh my goodness," Vicky gasped. "Honey, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to scare ya." Lori hugged her tightly. Just let go of me for a minute while I close the They both stood silently in the distance. They both stood silently, as in the distance, from somewhere, in the shadow of the pines, they heard a motor. A small engine that sputtered, as if it had a rough idle. "What is that?" Vicky said, shining the flashlight behind her. The motor chugged and then roared to life. Vicky slammed the glass door shut. Lori saw the look of terror on Vicky's face. There was a decorative boat oar hanging on the wall. Vicky grabbed it and looked grimly at Lori. "I need you to call 911, Lori," she whispered. "I'm going to lock all the doors and come back here, okay?" "No," Lori pleaded with her. "Please, don't. I need you to help me out here, kiddo. There's no time to debate this." "What was that?" They could hear the motor growling outside, muffled by the walls of the house. "Call! Right now!" Lori ran to the phone while Vicky ran to the front door to lock it. 911, came the dispatcher's voice. "What's the nature of your emergency?" Lori didn't talk to many adults, leave alone if someone in law enforcement. There's a man." "A man?" Lori heard the motor howl on the far side of the house, and Vicky let out a scream. "Please! Please help me!" Lori's voice was weak. "You'll need to speak up, honey. I can't hear what you're—" There was a loud metallic ripping sound as the chainsaw blade chewed its way through her parents' front door. Vicky came running into the rec room and grabbed Lori. "Come on, Lori!" she squealed. "We have to go!" "Hello?" came the dispatcher. "Hello? Is there anyone there?" Vicky grabbed the receiver from Lori. "Hello? This is 47622 Pineview Lane. There's some maniac with a chainsaw trying to get into the house. Please send cops." "Ma'am, if this is a prank, you will be subject to—" "This isn't a prank, you stupid bitch! Get cops here now!" "Now calm down and talk slowly so I can—" The sputtering motor made its way from the foyer to the living room, roaring intermittently as the man lumbered his way looking for victims. "Oh my God!" Vicky yelled. "He's in the fucking house!" She dropped the phone, and she and Lori ran into Lori's parents' room. There was a large, thick door that moved on a track and slid closed. There were 2 iron bolts that slid into metal slots like an old deadbolt. The motor roared to life again and began ripping its way into the solid wood door. "Go hide," Vicky said to Lori. "No, I want to stay with you," Lori protested. "You can't. I have to fight. You need to hide before he gets to the door." The rounded edge of the saw chewed its way through the door, spitting sawdust into her parents' room. She ran into their bathroom and climbed into the cupboard and curled into a ball while Vicky took a stance, planting her feet into the floor and held the oar like a baseball player ready to bat. Hang on, my antivirus software just decided to pop up. Mercifully, the saw got stuck in the door. And stalled. Vicky could see the man struggling to pull the blade from the wound in the door. She started to chop at the saw with the oar, hoping to bend it or break that murderous chain. It didn't seem that either was happening. "No!" Vicky screamed. "No, you don't!" But the man was able to get the saw out of the door, and she could hear him trying to rip the cord. The motor sputtered to life again, and she could smell the aroma of gasoline. The saw blade made its way along the edge of the door and began to chew on the bolts. Sparks flew through the air, and Vicky continued her assault on the blade of the chainsaw. The saw made its way through the second bolt, and the cut metal dropped to the thick carpet, with the ends glowing orange. The man pulled the door open, and Vicky swung the oar, with the edge of the oar chopping into the bridge of his nose. There was a smacking sound, and blood began to jet from his nostrils. He stumbled back and then lumbered forward again. "Die, you motherfucker!" she shouted, and gave him another whack. The saw started with one pull, and he immediately swung it to block the oar. It chewed into the old wood within seconds. It split with the wooden blade falling to the floor. Vicky lunged forward with the cut end and tried to penetrate the man's chest. He knocked it away and swung the saw in an upward arc and opened her face. She didn't scream at first, until the blood leaked into her eyes. She tried to grimace, and gored flaps of what used to be her face opened up and hung painfully from her cheekbones. Lori looked through the crack in the cupboard, and she could see her babysitter run towards her and then slip in the puddle of blood that had gathered at her feet. "Ori!" Vicky had tried to say Lori, but without working lips it came out, "Ori! Run! Ori, preesh! Run!" The man's chainsaw plunged into Vicky's spine, and her body spasmed, vomiting out large black gobbets of blood to paint the bathroom with. Lori wept, both for Vicky and the thought that she was left to deal with this monstrosity alone. The man couldn't hear her crying over the chainsaw's chugging engine, nor did he hear the siren wail from the patrol car that had just shown up in her driveway. He did see the red and blue flashing lights reflecting through the windows. He shut off the chainsaw and began to walk away. When he heard Lori's crying in the bathroom cupboard, she could see his worn, blood-stained work boots work their way to the bathroom sink. She was not aware that the police had arrived. She squinted her eyes closed and awaited her discovery and the nightmare that would follow. But none came. Not at that moment. "Dispatch," Deputy Orono said into his shoulder mic. "Put me out there at 47622 Pineview Lane." "Copy, Victor 12. Dispatch came back. 47622 Pineview Lane. Orono saw that the front door had been ripped apart with something. Partial lights were on in the house, but there didn't seem to be any movement. "Dispatch, do you got a contact name?" "Initial caller was an 8-year-old girl by the name of Lori Harris. She should be with a babysitter by the name of Victoria Hanska." "Well, you might want to send me a couple of units, Dispatch. Looks like there's been some trouble." "Victor 2 to Victor 12. It was his shift sergeant, Raymond Wyndham. "Victor 2, copy. I don't want you going in there alone. Hang tight until backup arrives." "Copy that." Orono kept his mag light on the front of the house. He shined it back and forth, waiting to see any movement. He could only see shadows move with the movement of his light. Then he heard it. It was the sound of a small, crying child. "Hello?" he said into the house. "Granite County Sheriff's Department." The only response was the distant crying of a little girl. "This is Deputy Orono. I'm here to help. Let me know if you're safe. The crying just persisted. The urge to climb the steps and go in was maddening. Victor 12 to Victor 2. Victor 12, go ahead. Do we have an ETA on backup? I've got what sounds like a little child crying inside the house. Stay put, Victor 12. Victor 6 and 8 will be there shortly. Copy, sir. Orno stepped up onto the front porch. He surveyed the damaged door and peered inside to see if he could find the source of the crying. Hello? He repeated to the opening of the door. Can you hear me? Are you safe? The crying only persisted. He started thinking about his own daughter. If this was his kid, and she was in danger, wouldn't he want the cop to fuck protocol and go in? Oh, God damn it, he whispered to himself. He drew his Glock from its holster and walked across the threshold. Better to ask for forgiveness than ask permission, he thought. Lori wanted more than anything to leave the cupboard and run, but she thought for sure the man was waiting for her to do just that. So she sat and wept in her little hiding place. She heard a voice call from what seemed to be outside. Hope sprung up in her, and she slowly opened the cupboard door. Then she backed in, closing it quietly. Maybe this is a trap, she thought. She didn't understand why this man wanted to hurt her, or why he wanted to hurt Vicky. Was he an old boyfriend? No, too old. But he really didn't seem to have an age. He was ageless. It was dark, and she only caught glimpses of him while trying to run. His hair seemed long, dark and greasy. His face was covered in shadows. He was big, either big-boned or very muscular. There was that male voice again, calling to her. He was saying he was from the sheriff's department. He sounded like he was in the house. Hello? It came again. My name is Deputy Orno. I'm here to help. He was close. Lori pushed the cupboard door open, slowly, and looked around. There was no sign of the man. She took one foot out, and then the other, and paused for any movement. There was none, and she came all the way out and stood. She could see the glow of the deputy's flashlight coming from her parents' room. Help me, she squeaked. Keep talking, honey, the deputy ordered. I'll come to you. Stay where you are and keep talking. Be careful of the man. Orno reached the bedroom and gasped at the wreckage of the heavy wooden door. Jesus Christ, he thought to himself. What the fuck happened here? Can you see me? He asked, walking into the bedroom. I can see you, she said. Deputy Orno walked into the bathroom and stopped dead in his tracks. Vicky's ravaged body lay in a heap and a pool of blood that was already turning brown. Do you know where the man is? Orno asked, reaching his hand out to her. She shook her head and took his hand. He pulled her through the bedroom and out into the hall. Victor 12 to dispatch, he said into his shoulder mic. Victor 12, go ahead, dispatched answered. I've got Lori Harris and one apparently deceased female. I believe to be the babysitter, Victoria Hanska. Copy that, Victor 12. There's a male suspect at large. Appears to be using a chainsaw. Come again, Victor 12? Yeah, chainsaw. There are marks all over the place, and poor Miss Victoria seems to be chewed up by something like that. Victor 12, proceed with caution, came the voice of Wyndham. Copy. We'll be waiting for backup in my squad. As they made their way to the door, Orono heard a deep, throaty humming coming from somewhere else in the house. Oh shit, he thought. That's a fucking chainsaw if I ever heard one. Orono told Lori to run while he pulled his Glock out of its holster again. The saw met with his swinging gun hand and ripped through his wrist with ease. The gun went off and then flew through the air with his hand, sending a trail of blood everywhere. As the deputy screamed out, Lori made her way into the snow fort. She had hoped the new snowfall would camouflage the entrance. She curled into a ball and covered her ears as she heard the last of the deputy's pleas while being ripped apart. She had dozed off and wasn't quite sure how long. She was awakened by the sound of gunfire. She crawled to the entrance and peeked out of the white towel and saw two other police officers firing their guns at the man. He jerked as the bullets tore into him, but he showed no signs of slowing. "Dispatch! We have an officer down!" cried one of the deputies. "Send help!" The man bore down on the other cop, plunging the chainsaw into his chest. He tried to cry out, but vomited out his own blood instead. The one who was calling dispatch emptied his pistol and then ran into a squad car. The chainsaw ripped through the driver's side door and buried itself into the deputy's side. And now, Lori was truly alone. The wind had picked up, and nothing could be heard or seen within a few feet. She ducked back into her snow fort and cried herself to sleep again. During her blackout period, the SWAT team had been called in. They were not able to find anyone fitting the description the deputies had given, and forensics from the BCA, the Bureau of Crime Apprehension, came up from the Twin Cities to process the crime scene. A few hours, and Lori's parents had come back after being called by the police department. The sheriff's department had begun a county-wide manhunt for the suspect, while a few locals and Lori's parents put together a group to look for Lori, who was considered missing. "Do you think," Maud Harris tried to swallow her fears, "do you think she's, she's..." "Let's not talk like that, honey," Frank Harris tried to comfort his wife. "I'm going to check a few places, and then we can start in the woods, okay?" She nodded and watched as her husband walked out of the sawed-apart door and into the crisp daylight air. Most of the house had been sectioned off by police tape, while forensics were checking out every clue they could. There was so much blood and body parts that they would be here for a couple of days. Frank went out to his tool shed first. The deputy guarding the area led him into the shed, and he looked around and he didn't see any sign of his daughter. He walked out and looked grimly at the woods that surrounded his home. He thought about Lori being cold and alone out there in the woods. He couldn't even fathom the horror she had witnessed at such a young age. And that's when it came to him. The snow fort, he thought. She's gotta be in the goddamn snow fort. He ran to the area where the fort had been built, barely seeing the entrance so cleverly hidden by the white towel. He was so excited that he didn't notice that the deputy being stabbed through the throat from the back of his neck by a handmade hunting knife. Silently, the deputy gurgled some bloody bubbles and fell to the snowy ground. "Lori!" he called out, entering the fort. "Lori, please! Be in here! Daddy? She awoke and hurriedly pulled back the packing blanket. Daddy! He was shimmying his way down the narrow tunnel to the main room. Oh, thank God, he said. We thought you were... Daddy! Lori broke out in tears and reached for her father. When they joined hands, something had chewed through the ice walls and bit into Frank's leg. His eyes went big, and then he screamed out. The tunnel was painted a dark red with his blood. No! Lori yelled. Daddy, no! Pull me in, baby! Frank yelled at his daughter. He couldn't use his right leg anymore, and he knew for sure that the saw blade would come back for his other leg, or somewhere even worse. Lori dug her boots in and yanked her dad in as far as she could. Her father curled into a protective ball and then grabbed his daughter. It's okay, kiddo, he said, trying to comfort her. The police are here. But he didn't know that the man had already dispatched every officer in the house and surrounding area. Even his wife had been gored with a chainsaw. She lay beside the steaming hot tub, trying fruitlessly to hold in her intestines. They huddled by the far wall of the fort, and both screamed as the saw ripped through the opposite wall. Little particles of ice danced in the air like snowflakes. The saw cut several lines into the wall and then stopped. They could hear the engine stop on the chainsaw, then some crunching snow, and then a loud thump as the man threw himself into the cut ice. The wall buckled a little, creating several spider-webbed cracks. Frank pulled himself up on top of his daughter to protect her from the coming violence. That crunching of snow again, and another loud thump hit the wall. Portions of the fort were beginning to fall in. The fort that these two had built with love and care was going to become their tomb. The thudding began relentlessly. The man was trying to punch his way through the wall. More of the fort began to fall and let in daylight. Snow and ice crystals obscured their view, so they could only see a large, dark shape climb into the open hole of their fort. "Stay back, you fucking bastard!" Frank yelled. The man pulled out his hunting knife and lunged at Lori's dad. The blade slid to the hilt into his heart, and he could feel the muscle beginning to lose its rhythm, desperately holding on to life. Frank cried out and grabbed the man by the face. "No, Daddy!" she said, gripping him. The man reached out and took hold of Lori's hood and almost choked her. She unzipped her coat and slithered out of it and ran to the hole in the wall. She looked back as the man pulled the knife out of her father and turned to face her. "Daddy!" she cried. "Run, baby," he uttered. "For the love of God, run!" As the man tried to lunge at her again, her dad grabbed his coat to give Lori a chance to get a head start. The man turned to her father and drove the hunting knife into his skull. Up under the chin, through the tongue, into the roof of the mouth, making its way through the nasal cavity and the eye sockets, and making its final purchase into the brain. With little effort, he pulled the knife from his kill, and then turned to see Lori run into the house. Lori screamed as she saw all the bodies and body parts strewn about the house. She slid on someone's discarded guts and landed next to her mother. She tried to scream, but nothing came out. Her mother's eyes were wide open, and her mouth was agape with blood just on the verge of coagulating around her lips. "Mama!" she whispered. "Mama, no!" She cradled her mother's head in her lap, sobbing. The man came running. The chainsaw was roaring full throttle. The scent of gasoline fought with the sharp scent of chlorine from the hot tub. Running with the saw raised above his head, Lori rolled her mother's corpse towards him, spilling her small intestinal tract across the ice-covered wood floor. His boot hit her mother's guts, and the inertia sent him sprawling. He hit her mom's body and went ass over tea kettle, hitting his head sharply on the edge of the hot tub. There was an audible crunch as the vertebrae in his neck snapped and instantly paralyzed him from the neck down. Lori stood up and began tugging on his coat. She successfully pulled him into the hot tub head first, and she fell backwards into the hot tub with him. He couldn't move. His head was submerged underwater, and he began to panic. Gasping, his lungs took on the chlorinated water, burning his lungs. He tried to cough, but his struggles were beginning to get weaker and weaker. Lori backed out of the hot tub immediately and watched in horror as this man drowned. There was no struggle. She didn't know he was paralyzed. She eyed the still sputtering chainsaw and then ran over and picked it up. As it roared obediently to life, she plunged it deep into his neck, severing the head from the shoulders. The hot tub bubbled with gore. Lori threw the chainsaw into the hot tub that sank next to the man's floating head. She cried, knowing she was now orphaned and didn't know who was left to come and rescue her. In the distance, more sirens began to wail. And that, my friends, is chainsaws and hot tubs. And yeah, so there was a lot of blood and gore, and I never once did I ever think I'd be writing a horror story about not a maniac like that. I guess you could call him a serial killer. Damn. I hope you liked that, Shannon. I hope that means you liked it. So yeah, so when I got this prompt, I was like, oh, it looks like I'm gonna be writing about some serial killer on a rampage. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to write, and after I finished each one of these stories, before I published them, I did send a copy of the final draft of the story to each one of the dreamers. So, yeah, you liked it too, Kev? Good. So, yeah, and I got positive feedback from pretty much everybody. Except for two of the dreamers, and I don't know why I didn't hear back from them, but I didn't, and that's fine. I mean, they made stories anyways, and you guys commented on it, so but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Next week is called Aunt Dottie's Wake, and that one is yeah, that one is a pretty good one. I guess one of the things I really liked about writing this book was when I was listening to the person tell me about their dream. Everything was just flowing in my head as far as how I was going to write this, what was going to happen, boom, boom, boom. And when I got done talking to him, I was already fleshing it out, writing it in my little notebook. So, yeah, and it was actually, and then the last dreamer. Actually, I don't think he was the last one to give me his dream, but anyways, his dream just tied everything together, and everything flowed so well. I wasn't sure how this book was going to turn out and if it was going to flow right for the reader, but I heard a lot of really great feedback from people that have checked out this book from the library here in town, and other people that have ordered on Amazon. So there you go. I mean, people liked it. People that read it liked it. So that's all that counts, right? Right. So I don't know how well the broadcast went tonight, because on my monitor it has shown that it kind of glitched out a few times. So did you guys get any glitches on your end or not? I do not know. So, but anyhow, tune in next week when we will be doing Aunt Dottie's Wake. I believe Bobby will be joining me for Tunes for Tuesday next week, and we'll probably be playing the rest of the songs that we've got down for our upcoming gigs. There's one gig that we're playing. I think we play for 2-3 hours, and another one we play for about 3 hours. So I think we have more than enough music, but we'll see. Plus, him and I talk all the time. It did freeze a few times. Okay. Hopefully none of the story got cut out. So, but if it did, I'm sorry and I apologize. But yeah. Anyhow, I am going to call it a night here. This one almost lasted the whole hour. Every one of these stories have been telling me it was about 25-minute long stories. And this one is... well, this one doesn't tell me. Okay. So, anyway, yep, Aunt Dottie's Wake is next week. We're going to be going to a funeral with a friend from work. This is her nightmare. Well, actually, she doesn't, I don't think she works there anymore. She retired. So, yeah. Anyways, this is her nightmare we'll be bringing to you next week. So please join me for Horror Hump Days, and also join me and Bobby for Tunes on Tuesday. We're going to try to get some more stuff, and I think maybe what we'll do is we'll do that in the wintertime. That's when things seem to slow down, is the winter. So we'll have more content, more stuff for more people, blah, blah, blah. So it picked right up where it froze, so nothing lost. Awesome. That's really good news. Thanks for the feedback, man. I appreciate that. So anyhow, thank everybody for showing. Chuck, Shannon, Kev. I did not see Bobby or Beth here tonight. I don't know what happened to them. I hope they're okay. But yeah, you guys have a good night. Kevin, I hope you sleep well. Shannon, you are very welcome. Thank you for coming out here and watching this. Also, everybody have a great 4th of July. I don't know what I got planned, but I plan on doing something fun. Who knows? Maybe I'll write this weekend. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing, but hopefully it's something memorable, right? So, have a good night. Peace and a bottle of hair grease. Mwah. Love you guys. Thank you for everything. And come on back again. All right. Nighty night, Kevin.